Today, across the country, there are children spending the day in fear. Too frightened to go to school, too frightened to fight back, too frightened to tell anyone. Across the country today, children are being bullied.
As part of this morning Be a Kind campaign, we want you to watch this video with your children. You'll hear from two mums whose children took their own lives as a result of the bullying they experienced. Bullying that occurred in person and online.
17-year-old Felix Alexander used to be a normal, happy child. One day, he left home and stepped out in front of a train. He endured cruel torments from bullies for years.
In February this year, 14-year-old Megan Evans killed herself after being inundated with bullying messages on Snapchat. Her parents had no idea she was being targeted.
Their interviews are hard to hear, but they are important. Their stories are a warning to parents, to children being bullied, and to those who take part in the bullying.
On April the 27th, 2016, our beautiful 17-year-old son took his own life. He decided to do this because he couldn't see a way to be happy. People who had never even met Felix were abusing him over social media, and he found that he was unable to make and keep friends, as it was difficult to befriend the most hated boy in the school. I write this letter not for sympathy, but because there are so many more children like Felix who are struggling, and we need to wake up to the cruel world we are living in. I'm appealing to children to be kind, always. Never to stand by and leave bullying unreported. Be that one person prepared to stand up to unkindness. You'll never regret being a good friend. Our lives have been irrevocably damaged by the loss of our wonderful son. Please don't let it happen to any other family.
Well, Lucy is here now, and it's an extremely powerful letter. So it was in 2009, when he was 10, that this torment began. What was the first incident that you became aware of?
It was just little incidences of unkindness, little comments about, you know, why didn't he have this or why didn't he have that, not being invited to a party. It was more exclusion than anything else.
How did it get progressively worse?
He was called a name by somebody every day. Probably not the same person. Probably quite often the first time that person might have said anything, but it might have been the fifth time he'd heard it that day. He was alone at lunchtimes, he was alone at weekends. His social life was, you know, our family. And if he made a friend outside, it wouldn't be long before they'd get a text message or a Facebook message saying, what do you want to be friends with him for? He's the most hated boy in the school.
With the social media and that coming into his life, it wasn't even like he could just leave it at the school gate. This was now in his home, in his bedroom, in his pocket.
Yeah, well, we tried to stop it being so much in the home, but that just excludes and isolates even more, because his generation, not so much with older children, but I think his year group particularly, that's the only way they communicate. They're not very good at communicating face to face.
And I don't want to dwell too much on the day when he took his own life, and that morning, and he was meant to be getting the bus to school, and he didn't go. And
he was meant to be catching the train, and he didn't get to school, and the school called me and said that somebody had seen him getting off a bus in a local village. And I knew that he knew some people in that village, so I thought that, because he'd been upset, and I thought maybe he'd gone to speak to this friend he had there, so we went to look for him.
And yeah, no, that's fine. We know what happened the rest of that day.
Had you had no inkling that day?
No.
That's what he would do. And if for anybody, and I'm going to have to say it for anybody who missed it, but he threw himself in front of the train.
Yeah.
But there was no indication, nothing that had said that any day was going to be any sadder than the day before.
No, and we talked, you know, in a general sense about suicide before. And he'd said to me, I don't worry, Mum, I'd never do that, because I'm not brave enough.
Oh, it's still so incredibly raw.
Yeah.
For you and your family.
Yeah.
Which is why you wrote the letter.
Yeah, it's been running around in my head for, you know, every time I take the dog for a walk, the words were in my head. I desperately need to raise awareness. I desperately need for people to talk about this, to talk to their children.
In your letter, there was the word that is repeated all the way through, and you talk about a lot, is kindness.
Yeah, it's really simple. Just be kind.
What sort of a girl was Meghan?
Oh, Meghan was bright. She was vivacious. She was happy. She was hugely popular. She was sporty. She was just a normal, happy-go-lucky teenager.
And you describe it as almost like her living a double life, because to you and the rest of the family, as you've just described this girl, very different to this other side of her life that she was going through, because you really didn't see any signs of anything.
I didn't see anything out of the ordinary with her, aside from she'd have her moments where she was moody, but then, you know, what teenagers...
Was she secretive?
She was secretive. If I took her phone off her for any reason, then she would log out of all her apps. You know, she'd delete messages. She wouldn't leave her phone laying around. She would have it with her all the time.
You were with the younger children out of the house, and she'd gone missing for a little short period of time, hadn't she?
She had, yeah. Meghan liked to take a bath, and she would take a long bath. So nobody thought anything different of it at the time, until they went to get her to... They're actually going to go in the hot tub, and they wanted to see if she wanted to go in with them, and they
found her.
Yeah.
What did you discover afterwards that you didn't know before?
There was... A few of her friends contacted me and had said that she was being relentlessly bullied via social media with... I think sometimes physical bullying would be a bit easier to spot, but this was relentless day, night, in the middle of the night when she took her phone to bed. It was, we discovered she was getting messages all through the night, and it was just cruel, evil words.
There was one final message, wasn't there?
There was, yeah.
The final message was, "Why don't you hang yourself?"
Yeah.
And she texted back, "Okay."
Okay, yeah.
Oh, my goodness me. I don't know.
Lucy, this is a similar sort of situation to you and your lovely Felix. It's getting us all, I have to say. It's like death by 1,000 cuts, isn't it?
Children are very cruel to each other, and they don't see that their words have an impact. If it's done so remotely, they remove themselves from the effect, and they need to understand the cause and effect and what happens to that person and how it can just destroy them inside.
But there are so many lives destroyed by this, because for you and your family, the impact of this, that you have to pick yourself up and go on. For the person that wrote that message, I know they're probably so far from your mind at the moment, but they don't realise the impact of that. She has to live with that for the rest of her life, of what she's done. I mean, these small messages, these small things that people throw out there, they don't realise the danger.
Be that one person in a group chat who says, hold on, that's not right. You can't say that.
Yeah.
Turn the tide of the conversation.
The tragedy also is that Meghan was that person.
I was just about to say, Meghan, yeah, she was that person. She was, which makes it so difficult for us and everybody who knew her to understand why she did what she did. She was always helping other people. I had a little boy who posted a note through my door, a handwritten little note, and he said he's so sorry for Meghan. She helped him when he was being bullied, and he wasn't there for her. And also my younger daughter, her and her friends, if anything was happening in school, they were having a hard time, they would all go to Meghan. Meghan was the go-to girl to sort stuff out.
What advice could you give to families who are watching this?
Nobody knows what goes on in somebody else's head, and be careful, because words can't be taken back, and words can kill.
Well, those interviews are very hard to hear, very hard for us to do ourselves. But the stories are incredibly important. Please hit the pledge button below this video. Pledge to watch it again with your children. We know the first step to tackle the bullies is to talk about it and to ask for help.
If your child knows that bullying is taking place, tell them how important it is to be kind. Never turn a blind eye to bullying. In the words of Felix's mum, be that one person prepared to stand up to unkindness.
And if you're being bullied, remember, help is out there. Don't be afraid to talk. It will get better.